Hello, we are on Pride and Prejudice, chapter 53. I don't think, I think I just looked and I already forgot. I think 60. How many chapters did I say? 61. So we're almost there, guys. Let's see what we can get done in this time. I worked today. I'm tired. And this looks like a long chapter. So let's read and see what we learn. Mr. Wickham was so perfectly satisfied with this conversation that he never again distressed himself or provoked his dear sister Elizabeth by introducing the subject of it, and she was pleased to find that she had said enough to keep him quiet. I don't know if you guys are hearing the beautiful birds chirping. Do you hear it? It's so lovely. The afternoon, the sun is setting. Yosvane Romo Nodal. Hello. Sam's Loop. Hello. It's good to see you guys, or not see you, but text you. The day of his and Lydia's departure soon came, and Mrs. Bennet was forced to submit to a separation, which, as her husband by no means entered into her scheme of their all going to Newcastle, was likely to continue at least a 12-month. "Oh, my dear Lydia," she cried, "when shall we meet again? Oh, Lord, I don't know. Not these 2 or 3 years, perhaps. Write to me very often, my dear." "As often as I can. But you know married women have never much time for writing. My sisters may write to me. They will have nothing else to do." I remember that line from the BBC version, or no, it wasn't BBC, but it was on Netflix that we watched. "Hi, Llama. It's good to see you." So it's funny that line's exactly the way they said it in the movie. David Matson, my friend Laurel, who just came on. Yay! What books are y'all listening to in your English class? And are y'all in a virtual class, or are you went back to brick and mortar school? It's nice that y'all are joining together, Laurel and David. I enjoy that. Thank you for coming and letting me know. Mr. Wickham's adieus much more affectionate than his wife's. He smiled, looked handsome, and said many pretty things. "He is a fine fellow," said Mr. Bennet as soon as they were out of the house. "As ever I saw, how quickly they forget. He simpers and smirks and makes love to us all. I'm prodigiously proud of him. I defy even Sir William Lucas himself to produce a more valuable son-in-law." So is he being serious or is he being sarcastic? The loss of her daughter made Mrs. very dull for several days. "I often think," she said, "that there's nothing so bad as parting with one's friend. One seems so forlorn without them." "This is the consequence, you see, madame, of marrying a daughter," said Elizabeth. "It must make you better satisfied that your other 4 are single." "It is no such thing. Lydia does not leave me because she's married, but only because her husband's regiment happens to be so far off. If that had been nearer, she would not have gone so soon." But the spiritless condition which this event threw her into was shortly relieved, and her mind opened again to the agitation of hope by an article of news which then began to be in circulation. The housekeeper at Netherfield had received orders to prepare for the arrival of her master, who was coming down in a day or two to shoot there for several weeks. Oh, who's the master of Netherfield? Do you guys remember? The master of Netherfield is Bingley. Yeah. He's returning. What is this about? "Well, well, and so Mr. Bingley is coming down, sister," for Mrs. Phillips first brought her the news. "Well, so much the better. Not that I care about it, though. He's nothing to us, you know, and I'm sure I never want to see him again. But, however, he's very welcome to come to Netherfield if he likes it. And who knows what may happen? That is nothing to us. You know, sister, we agreed long ago never to mention a word about it. And so, is it quite certain he's coming?" "You may depend on it," replied the other, "for Mrs. Nichols was in Meryton last night. I saw her passing by and went out myself on purpose to know the truth of it, and she told me that it was certain true. He comes down on Thursday at the latest, very likely on Wednesday. She was going to the butcher's, she told me, on purpose to order in some meat on Wednesday, and she's got 3 couple of ducks just fit to be killed." Miss Bennet had not been able to hear of his coming without changing color. So Jane is like, "Oh, he's coming back. What does it mean?" Like she can't help her feelings. I saw you look at me today, Lizzie, when my aunt told us of the present report, and I know I appeared distressed, but don't imagine it was from any silly cause. I was only confused for the moment because I felt that I should be looked at. I do assure you that the news does not affect me either with pleasure or pain. I'm glad of one thing, that he comes alone, because we shall see the less of him. Not that I'm afraid of myself, but I dread other people's remarks. Brave New World. David, I'm not sure that I read that whole book. I might have skipped some parts of it. We're doing a hybrid with remote days 3 days a week, in-person days 2 times a week. Yeah, that seems to be kind of normal. That seems to be what a lot of people are doing. Um, my work does that, and it doesn't make any sense to me because you're still around those people 3 days a week. Unless it's reduced number of people. Like if you have fewer kids in school, but my work has everybody come in for Monday and Tuesday, and then I think that's how I got COVID. I think because I was around a lot of people. And that's the only time I was really around people. Although we were wearing masks and um, we were, doing all the right protocols. So how do you think Jane feels? Do you think she hopes that there's some chance, or is she just really, truly, I don't care. It's over and done with. Elizabeth did not know what to make of it. Had she not seen him in Derbyshire, she might have supposed him capable of coming there with no other view than what was acknowledged. But she still thought him partial to Jane, and she wavered as to the greater probability of his coming there with his friend's permission, or being bold enough to come without it. Yet it is hard, she sometimes thought, that this poor man cannot come to a house which he has legally hired without raising all this speculation. I will leave him to himself. In spite of what her sister declared, and really believed to be her feelings in the expectation of his arrival, Elizabeth could easily perceive that her spirits were affected by it. They were more disturbed, more unequal than she had often seen them. The subject which had been so warmly canvassed between their parents about a 12-month ago was now brought forward again. As soon as ever Bingley comes, my dear, said Mrs. Bennet, you will wait on him, of course. No, no, you forced me into visiting him last year and promised if I went to see him, he should marry one of my daughters. But it ended in nothing, and I will not be sent on a fool's errand again. His wife represented to him how absolutely necessary such an attention would be from all the neighboring gentlemen on his returning to Netherfield. "'Tis an etiquette I despise," said he. "If he wants our society, let him seek it. He knows where we live. I will not spend my hours in running after my neighbors every time they go away and come back again." There's our Pride, right? If you're looking for um, examples of pride from Pride and Prejudice, there's our Pride. No, I'm not going. He can come to me. I already made myself available, and look where it got me. So no, I'm not chasing after anybody. Consoled by this resolution, she was the better able to bear her husband's incivility, though it was very mortifying to know that her neighbors might all see Mr. Bingley in consequence of it before they did. As the day of his arrival drew near, "I begin to be sorry that he comes at all," said Jane to her sister. "It would be nothing. I could see him with perfect indifference, but I can hardly bear to hear it thus perpetually talked of. My mother means well, but she does not know, no one can know, how much I suffer from what she says. Happy shall I be when his stay at Netherfield is over." "I wish I could say anything to comfort you," replied Elizabeth, "but it is wholly out of my power. You must feel it, and the usual satisfaction of preaching patience to a sufferer is denied me, because you have always so much." Mr. Bingley arrived. Mrs. Bennet, through the assistance of servants, contrived to have the earliest tiding of it, like to find out from the servants. Jonah Chick, thank you so much for reading. And then there were none. I had to do it for school, and I watched your videos, and it helped so much. Thank you. Jonah, thank you so much for taking the time to let me know that. It really means a lot to me when you guys pop in here and let me know that you've read and that it's helpful. Honestly, there are a lot of days I just think I'm not going to read anymore. There's almost 40 titles in, and I'm not teaching anymore, and maybe there's no point to it anymore. And then somebody pops in and lets me know, it helped them with their AP class, or it helped them because they've got ADHD, or because of COVID, or, it's just whatever reason, they take the time. And I'm so appreciative of that. That really encourages me to keep reading. Like I tell y'all to keep reading. So thank you so much for that time. I know for teenagers, it's a big deal, and I appreciate it so much. Um, I hope that I have other books on my list that are helpful to you as you're studying. This chapter's long, and I forgot to bring my water with me. That the period of anxiety and fretfulness on her side might be as long as it could. She counted the days that must intervene before their invitation could be sent, hopeless of seeing him before. But on the third morning, after his arrival in Hertfordshire, she saw him from her dressing room window enter the paddock and ride towards her house. Oh no. Her daughters were eagerly called to partake of her joy. Jane resolutely kept her place at the table, but Elizabeth, to satisfy her mother, went to the window. She looked. She saw Mr. Darcy with him, and sat down again by her sister. "There is a gentleman with him, mamma," said Kitty. "Who can it be? Some acquaintance or other, my dear, I suppose. I'm sure I do not know." "La," replied Kitty, "it looks just like that man that used to be with him before. Mr. What's his name? That tall, proud man." Jane looked at Elizabeth with surprise and concern. She knew but little of their meeting in Derbyshire, and therefore felt for the awkwardness which must attend her sister in seeing him almost for the first time after receiving his explanatory letter. Both sisters were uncomfortable enough. Each felt for the other, and of course for themselves, and their mother talked on of her dislike of Mr. Darcy and her resolution to be civil to him only as Mr. Bingley's friend, without being heard by either of them. But Elizabeth had sources of uneasiness which could not be suspected by Jane, to whom she had never yet had courage to show Mr. Gardiner's letter, or to relate her own change of sentiment towards him. To Jane he could only be a man whose proposal she had refused, and whose merit she had undervalued. But to her own more extensive information, he was a person to whom the whole family were indebted for the first of benefits, and whom she regarded herself with an interest, if not quite so tender, at least as reasonable and just as what Jane felt for Bingley. "Hey, Kelly, how's the weather?" Zahava Kaplan, thank you for your videos. Watch them for their eyes were watching God. Loved that book. I'm so glad that that's been one that people have continued to read. Thank you, Zahava. Zahava. I don't know where the accent goes. Zahava or Zahava. There could be so many places I hit the accent. Zahava. 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 I'm sorry, I get a little crazy. Mark, just wanted to say thank you for helping me read a separate piece and to kill. Ooh, two, yay. Um, Zahava. Colin, how are you? How are my people? How is school? How was the new year? Do you guys miss me? Do you even remember me? I miss you guys, that's for sure. I miss teaching. I really miss teaching. All right, so let's keep going. The color which had been driven from her face returned for half a minute with an additional glow, and a smile of delight added luster to her eyes as she thought that for that space of time that his affection and wishes must still be unshaken, but she would not be secure. Um, Yasmina, you miss me. I'm right here. You don't need to miss me. Oh, you start back tomorrow. Oh, that's true. That's typical. I can't believe the year's gone by so quickly. I just wonder how, like, I know you guys don't test, but like SATs and ACTs, I wonder how that's going to impact this generation. Mark, you're so welcome. A separate piece in To Kill a Mockingbird. So was that freshman year or is that sophomore year? I'm always curious to know who reads what, when, and at what grade. "Let me see first how he behaves," said she. "It will then be early enough for expectation." She sat intently at work, striving to be composed, and without daring to lift up her eyes, still anxious curiosity carried them to the face of her sister as the servant was approaching the door. Jane looked a little paler than usual, but more sedate than Elizabeth had expected. On the gentleman's appearing, her color increased, yet she received them with tolerable ease, and with a propriety of behavior equally free from any symptom of resentment or any unnecessary complaisance. "De Lamar, how are you?" Elizabeth said as little to either as civility would allow, and sat down again to her work with an eagerness which it did not often command. She had ventured only one glance at Darcy. He looked serious as usual, and she thought more as he had been used to look in Hertfordshire than as he had seen him at Pemberley. But perhaps he could not in her mother's presence be what he was before her uncle and aunt. It was painful, but not improbable, conjecture. Bingley she had likewise seen for an instant, and in that short period saw him looking both pleased and embarrassed. Sebastian Akinla. Have any advice if you struggle to pay attention during online school? Oh, I had to bribe myself. I mean, you have to play this game that your mind is separate from your body and your mind is controlling your body. Happy New Year's. So, what I'm saying, Sebastian, is this: give yourself whatever it is, if it's Fortnite, if it's Snapchat, if it's something you really want to do, block it from yourself and set a timer, 20 minutes. Be reasonable. 20 minutes is about a lot, and especially if you have ADHD, then try and use as many senses as you can. So if there's headphones that you can use, if you can also have pencil and paper while they're reading or writing, while the activity is going on, and tell yourself, I'm going to really do this hard for 20 minutes. And maybe instead of 20 minutes, set a task to accomplish. But if it's a big task, really 20 minutes to start is all you can manage. Then at the end of that, let yourself have the reward, whatever that reward is, whether it's calling friends, texting friends, um, Snapchatting, watching a show, a short show, and then tell yourself, okay, that was my reward. Give it 5 minutes. I mean, be reasonable. You need to do a lot more work than play. And then cycle it again, try again, and always get up and move. Again, if you have ADHD, that's the big thing to think in terms of. So if you're sitting doing online learning, that's hard. I would say a lot of times I'll work at my counter, put my laptop on my counter and be up and moving around. Put music that doesn't distract you on. I don't know, Sebastian. Let me know if that helps or not. And Munib, I was thinking about you, but I didn't want to just put all your business on my comments. Are you feeling better? I'm telling you, this crazy virus. I'm tired. I worked in the office today, and I'm ready to go take my nap now. So happy 2021. Great. I'm glad everybody's better. We're going to get better little by little. So just keep trying. But I just don't overdo it. And I make my walks every day because I need to get my strength back. Madison Gill, is this like your class? It kind of is. This is the way I taught too. I would read you see it on there. I would teach, and then I would talk, and then I would read, and then I would talk. And some people hate the way I teach, but it's the way I teach. Manita, the lesson was what to do to pay attention with online learning. So I was trying to give some strategies on how to stay focused with online learning. And it's hard. It's not for everybody. It was really hard. I did graduate work online, and it was really, really hard for me. I had to print everything out into hard copy. That's why I always tell you guys to get a book, to have a physical book or print it out or something, because I think having that book, that tangible, that's something you can touch and you can write in, I think it makes all the difference in keeping your brain engaged. So where did I leave off? Could I expect it to be otherwise? Said she. Why did he come? She's talking to herself. She was in no humor for conversation with anyone but himself, and to him she had hardly courage to speak. She inquired after his sister, but could do no more. It's a long time, Mr. Bingley, since you went away, said Mrs. Bennet. He readily agreed to it. I began to be afraid you would never come back again. People did say, oh, this is my boss calling, so I'll call her back, because it's after my work time. I began to be afraid you would never come back again. People did say you meant to quit the place entirely at Michaelmas, but however, I hope it is not true. A great many changes have happened in the neighborhood since you went away. Miss Lucas is married and settled. and one of my own daughters. I suppose you've heard. Indeed, you must have seen it in the papers. It was in the Times and the Courier, I know, that it was not but put in as ought to be. It was only said lately, George Wickham, Esquire, to Miss Lydia Bennet, without there being a syllable said of her father, or the place where she lived, or anything. It was my brother Gardner's drawing up, too, and I wonder how he came to make such an awkward business of it. Did you see it? Of course, why would they make a normal wedding announcement when it was an elopement and a very scandalous one? Um, Wealth of knowledge and expertise. Maniba, you're so kind. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, I just think it's so funny that Mrs. Bennet doesn't see how misguided she is. Like, everything that her daughter did was scandalous. And for her, all's well that ends well. They're married. It's all good. And so it should have been like all society says, with the big announcement, with the big wedding, with all the niceties. She just lives in a naivete, doesn't she? Um, and as I think about that, I think I'm sitting here judging uh, Lydia and saying, "Oh, she ran off and got married." And is that what Austen is trying? The point she's trying to make is how we just get caught up in our own social constructs, and that it's not necessarily right. Maybe Miss Bennet's way of handling it is the right way. It happened, and it all ended out okay. So let's be happy about it. Bingley replied that he dare, but Mr. Darcy looked, therefore he could not tell. "It is a delightful thing, to be sure, to have a daughter well married," continued her mother. "But at the same time, Mr. Bingley, it's very hard to have her taken such away from me. They are gone now to Newcastle, a place quite northward, it seems, and there they are to stay. I do not know how long. His regiment is there, for I suppose you have heard of his leaving the shire, and of his being gone into the regulars. Thank heaven he has some friends, though perhaps not as many as he deserves. Elizabeth, you knew this to be leveled at who knew this to be leveled at Mr. Darcy, was in great misery of shame, that she could hardly keep her seat. It drew from her, however, the exertion of speaking, which nothing else had so effectively done before, and she asked Bingley whether he meant to make any stay in the country at present. A few weeks, he believed. "When you have killed all your own birds, Mr. Bingley," said her mother, "I beg you will come home here and shoot as many as you please on Mr. Bennet's manor. I'm sure he will be vastly happy to oblige you, and will save all the best of the coveys for you." Elizabeth's misery increased at such unnecessary, such officious attention. Were the same fair prospect to arise at present as had flattered them a year ago, everything, she was persuaded, would be hastening to the same vexatious conclusion. At that instant she felt that years of happiness could not make Jane or herself amends for moments of such painful confusion. "The first wish of my heart," she said to herself, "is never more to be in company with either of them. Their society can afford no pleasure that will atone for such wretchedness as this. Let me never see either one or the other again." She's just so embarrassed because she knows her mother and her family's behavior doesn't match Bingley's and Darcy's. Yet the misery, for which years of happiness were to offer no compensation, received soon afterwards material relief from observing how much the beauty of her sister rekindled the admiration of the former lover. So Bingley comes back and she's so beautiful. And I'd forgotten how pretty she is, and he's falling in love all over again. Um, when first he came in, he had spoken to her but little, but every 5 minutes seemed to be giving her more of his attention. He found her as handsome as she had been last year, as good-natured and as unaffected, though not quite so chatty. Jane was anxious that no difference should be perceived in her at all, and was really persuaded that she talked as much as ever, but her mind was so busily engaged that she did not always know when she was silent. When Have you ever had that experience? You're thinking so much, you realize all these people are around you, you're not speaking to them, you're lost in your own thoughts, but you're not aware of it because it's like you're having a conversation in your own mind. "You are quite a visit in my debt, Mr. Bingley," she added, "for when you went to town last winter, you promised to take take a family dinner with us as soon as you returned. I have not forgot, you see, and I assure you I was very much disappointed that you did not come back and keep your engagement." Bingley looked at little silly at this reflection and said something of his concern at having been prevented by business. They then went away. Mrs. Bennet had been strongly inclined to ask them to stay and dine there that day, but though she always kept a very good table, she did not think anything less than 2 courses could be good enough for a man on whom she had an anxious design, or satisfy the appetite and pride of one who had 10,000 a year. There's her pride again. She could have asked them to stay, but she didn't have a fancy enough meal prepared for them. It's just kind of family cooking. So, all right, that leaves us at 54. Yay. And page 319 out of 368. So hopefully we will finish it. We've been reading this October, November, December. It's taken us a long time to get through it. And if you haven't, get your copy of Animal Farm, because that will be what's next. And I'm personally reading War and Peace. So if you want to read that, if you've had struggled like I have to not get it read, get a copy and join us on Discord. And you're welcome, Kelly. Join us on Discord and start reading along with us. I've put some read along tools that is helping me. And there's a really good Netflix version of War and Peace that I had to watch first before I could even tackle reading the book. It's got 600 characters. And that's the hard part, keeping track of the princes and princesses and dukes and counts and all these different nobility. But I really like the story. So if you've always longed to read War and Peace, I'm not reading it out loud, but if you are a reader that likes to read, just send me a message if you're not on Discord and let me know what chapter you're on and we can talk about it. So, well, that's it. Oh, that's not even 30 minutes yet. Good for me. I'm proud of myself. I didn't talk as much. If you haven't subscribed yet, we're closing in 11,000. I appreciate when you guys come in and let me know what you're learning. Sebastian, you didn't let me know if those tricks might help you, but try them out. Come back and let me know. If you guys have any other questions about how to be a better student, that's why I'm Best Tutor Friend. I'm here to help you. So subscribe, ring the bell so you know when I go live. Check us out on Discord and join in for the conversations. We've got lots of channels over there talking about different books that I've got on reading. And we talk about movies that we like to watch. We watched most of Pride and Prejudice together on a telewatch party. We have daily writing prompts that have to do with your own mental health and well-being. You're very welcome, Yasvani. I'm so glad you've been a regular. I will read to you next time. See ya.